Just kidding. There we go. Recording is started. Hi, guys. This is the first 2015 student workshop. We will be having quite a few of these. I've got a calendar that I'm populating now. I will be doing some, and then other of your favorite faculty members will be doing some, so you don't have to listen to me all the time. But this week we are going to talk quickly, about a half an hour or so, about presentation boards, discuss them for your classes, and the idea that they will be going into a portfolio at some point when you guys are about ready to graduate. That portfolio class is typically taught by either Krista, Chris Priest, or myself, and the three of us have gotten together and we know what we kind of want to see and stuff like that. So we'll talk a little bit about presentation boards and what you should do in your other studio classes so that by the time you walk into portfolio, you don't have to redo all your boards, because I have students that wind up having to redo a ton of boards, and it takes a lot of time. All right. After this session, next week we've got a using Photoshop for images session on a Tuesday again, and then we will be having some Revit. I know I get a lot of requests for Revit. Yes, the Revit student workshops will be coming back. You'll probably see maybe one a month or so. We're going to try to, we've got an area inside the Google Plus where we're going to try to do some Revit things in there, some smaller workshops in there. And what else? Let me, oh, and then we've got AutoCAD workshops that I will be doing, and I've got a couple other faculty that will be doing that too. And what else? I think that's about it. Let me make sure I got most of my stuff minimized or turned off or whatever. We're good there. And we're good here. All right. So, to start, presentation boards. All of you do some sort of presentations in all of your studio classes. Now, many of you currently rely on that PowerPoint, can't even believe I said the word, PowerPoint software to do your work. And it's really not that bad of software, but you guys are designers, so I'm looking for something a bit more on the creative side than what PowerPoint can offer for us. PowerPoint was made for people who work in offices who don't have that great design flair to be able to create presentations for other people who work in offices who also don't have that great design flair. So we use stuff like the Adobe Suite, Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop, all that kind of stuff. And for boards, my favorite is Illustrator. And so tonight I'm going to go in and show you how to lay out a quick board in Illustrator, talk about some of the different elements. And then I also really like InDesign as well. And those of you that took the G150, I think it's G150 now called that, where you go through the Adobe Suite, you guys get to touch on each of those, and Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop, get like a week of each of them at least. So don't let that software kind of go to waste. Use it as much as you possibly can. Don't rely on PowerPoint and the preset backgrounds and the preset templates. And the reason all that stuff's preset is because a lot of people don't have that eye for laying things out. But I mean, if you guys are able to lay out interior spaces and floor plans, then you should also be able to lay out boards, because it's a similar process. All right. The board that I have currently on the screen is from one of our recent grads, very successful graduate. She did a lot of great work. And you'll notice that it's clean, it's easy to read, it's easy to understand. We know what we're looking at. Front and center, the biggest piece on this board is the perspective, because it's what she designed. That's what we want to sell more than anything, right? So she's showing off what she designed, and then she gives a plan view so that people can relate to where we're looking. She gives a few key pieces of furniture and a few key elements that are going to be what's used as materials in the space. It's not overly cluttered. The text is easy to read and see. And more than anything, the first thing we notice on this is that perspective. Okay? That's what we're looking for in a presentation board. You guys, your first true presentation is when you go out and try to land that first job. So you're going to take your portfolios out, and you're going to have sets of presentation boards that you are going to basically pitch yourself to land that first job. Everybody in the design industry knows that when it gets too crazy on a presentation board, you're hiding your design and you're more focused on the presentation itself. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay? So there are a few things that we want to talk about and deal with to get to a clean presentation board. I've got this example up, and then I've got a couple other things that I wanted to show you real quickly here. Here's another pretty nice presentation board. You can see that it's a little, it's a JPEG, so it's going to be a little smaller. I can zoom in a little bit though for you guys. There we go. And so you'll notice this one, there is a background going on with this, but that background really did happen and was driven by the actual design of her project. Okay, and so we look at this one, and I sometimes get students that try to put backgrounds in their on their boards, and they put it all the way through, and the problem is you lose what you're really looking for. And you notice how this one really pretty much turns into a frame instead of a true background, because in the middle you don't get that background. All right, so there is the ability to be creative, and or however you want. I mean, I don't think this is any more or less creative than this, to be honest with you, but some of the students are like, oh, I want to be creative. Well, okay, there is a way that you can do this, but it still needs to be able to read. And you'll notice too that we're going to talk a little bit about fonts tonight too, and there's a change in fonts. This one's very blocky, straightforward, easy to read, easy to understand. And when we get to this one, we've got a little bit of flair going on here, but it only happens in the main title and then again in her logo. The rest of the stuff is very clean, easy to read, simple block style text. All right. I do have a few issues with this board. Labeling isn't the best. You know, we got these little elements here. And we did change this by the end, but I wanted to show good and bad type of stuff. But so we've got that idea, and we've got this idea, and I'm going to pull up Illustrator now and kind of show you what's going on here. All right, so I've got Adobe Illustrator up, and you know, over the next couple weeks and months and stuff, I'm going to actually do some Illustrator workshops so you guys can learn to work better with Illustrator. I've got a couple other faculty that are on board and are going to do some as well. So tonight's more about just the presentation ideas and aspects. We're not going to get in depth with Illustrator tonight. But what I did want to show, I've got a grid laid out here, and it's a very small grid, but it is a grid. And you will notice that in this presentation, the elements really follow along a grid design. Okay, so grid on, grid off. You can see that what's being created does follow a pattern. Now, a lot of you may have already taken the presentation class where we teach you how to use a grid. You'll notice that this stuff, it does move a little bit. It's not like everything is inside the grid itself. Some things are winding up spilling out. They're not perfect, but they're really close. And what that does is visually for the eye, it creates a balanced, clean layout. This other one that I just showed you, that Elena did, this is also grid-based. All right. Elena did use a grid on this, and you could lay a grid over this thing and find the grid and how it works. There are a few elements that move a little here and there, but you'll notice that lines definitely follow one another. The eye moves evenly across and up and down items. Okay, so these are the kind of things that we're looking to create when we do our boards. Now, one of the biggest things I notice when students are presenting is they are either worried so much about the layout that they forget the font stuff. And I've got a fonts PDF here that I wanted to open up and show you. They forget about the fonts, or they worry so much about the fonts that they forget about everything else. So before we even talk about a layout idea, let's talk about basic font and what to do with them. All right, so Elena's board, we saw the nice looking script font right up here. Many times I will get students that take that font and it winds up showing up for all the labels and all that and everything on the board. Well, what happens when you get too much script? Look at that. Makes it hard to read, right? Script was never meant to be what's called body text or what's called secondary text. It was never meant to be anything more than titles. A lot of script was actually made for things other than presentation as well. A lot of script fonts are more for things like wedding invitations. And I'm going to tell you right now that your wedding invitation and your interior presentation should not be the same thing, all right? Wedding invitations are wedding invitations, and presentations for your design ideas are just that. They're presentations for design ideas. If you've got a font that's difficult to read on a board, what's going to wind up happening is your client is going to focus on that and go, what does that say? I can't make out what that says. And they're going to sit there in their head thinking about that while you're talking about this wonderful floor plan that you've created that they are not listening to at all. All right? Now, some people go, yeah, but it's so pretty. Yes, if you're going to use it just as a title, it could be nice if it follows the design. And that was the other thing about Elena's, is that this followed this design. Okay? When we look at this one with the Xeno plan, if I did a scripty font up here, would it look like an office space? Probably not. All right, so you really have to think about it, and you have to use it sparingly. So font ideas. Try to stay away from scripts, okay, unless you're just using them for a specific type of title, and it works with the style of the actual design that you created. All right. Oh, I got a little extra eye in here. I got to get rid of that. Oops. The other thing I see a lot is students use either like a stylus or the AutoCAD City Blueprint, Country Blueprint. They use those architectural fonts. And on drawings, construction documents, or even on floor plan presentation inside the plan itself, not a bad idea to use it. But once you start using it as, again, a body, like you're doing a paragraph of that stuff, or using it as titles, not always the best. You're trying to create a professional look, not really a, not as much an architectural look as a professional look, because you're presenting to a client, all right? So I always tell students, unless it really follows the style again, unless it's a thematic reasoning or something like that, try to stay away from those. The like this MV Boley or the comic or this Rage Italic, these fonts that kind of give that whimsical or childish or light and airy, I've heard, type of feel. Again, if it's specific to theme or specific to style, maybe you're doing a children's healthcare project or a daycare center or something, maybe you're trying to get that feel across, then for the titles, it might be okay. But to do that and have it for like a restaurant that is going to be high-end, whatever, not going to work. All right, you're trying to make this professional looking. Personally, I like things like the Myriad Pro. Tahoma is a very clean and easy to read font. Times New Roman, if you're doing more of a classic style, is always great with the serifs going on, you know, those little tails at the end, those serifs. And then Arial is always an easy to read font as well. All right, so you want to think about fonts being more easy to read so that the person listening to you is focusing on your design and your presentation and less on what does that say. Okay, a little bit about fonts. Boards themselves. The biggest thing on a board should be a 3D visual or a plan. Something that you designed. You're selling your design. Okay? There are a lot of times where I get students that will throw a chair or a piece of furniture or whatever really big. Not something that they designed, something that they found, or, you know, oh, it's a great antique, or blah, you know, it's secondary. You do not get hired for jobs based on the ability to find a chair or a table. You don't. You get hired based upon your 3D planning, your spatial planning, floor planning, your idea and understanding of lighting, your understanding of wearability of materials, you know, all that kind of stuff is what people hire you for. They don't hire you because you can pick the perfect vase. It just, seriously, it's not how it works. I know a lot of times we think it is, and it's like, oh my gosh, my job is going to be so much fun because I get to go out and pick that stuff. Well, you do at times. You go on the residential side, you do at times, but typically you're going to do it with a client, or you're going to pick multiple items so the client can pick the final selection. Very rarely does a client give somebody full reign and says, you know what, you take over my house and make it look like what you want it to look like instead of what I was kind of thinking it would look like and needed your help on. All right, so it's quite rare. Frank Lloyd Wright used to do it, and he forced his people to wear the clothes that he thought they should wear and things like that, but we are not Frank Lloyd Wright, and a lot of people didn't like that about him. So what you want to show on a presentation is the space that you've created and how awesome that space is. You want to show the planning and how well you can plan space. And then secondary stuff is, hey, these are my selections and how they're going to fit in my design. All right? You guys are studying to be interior designers. So this is the big stuff. This is the secondary. So if we're thinking like there's some awards show that was just on the past couple of weeks, right? So supporting actors and actresses are all this stuff. Lead actors and actresses are this stuff. Okay? Hopefully everybody's getting that. So basics of how we're going to do a board. Well, hopefully everybody's run Illustrator before, so I'm just going to go up, do a little File New, and I'm going to call this whatever my board is, so I'm just going to call it a board for now. And typically our boards, what we're going to do is deal with, let me change my unit stance just so you guys can relate here. For your boards for portfolio, they're going to be 11 by 17, okay? 11 by 17 boards. So the width, 17, 11. And we do that because then you can print them out and you can also have an electronic copy, and more people are dealing with electronic copies. Okay. So we're going to do that. Depending on if you're going to print or just show electric, this RGB or CMYK is going to make a difference. RGB is for screen. CMYK is for if you're going to print it out. Okay, so when you go to a print shop, they print in CMYK. On the screen, it's RGB. And then your raster effects, which is basically your pixels. You want to try to keep it medium or high if you're going to print. If you're not going to print, you can leave it at screen. So those are just a couple things to think about. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK, and we've got an 11 by 17 board. Now, those of you that have used Illustrator, over to the side here, you've got a little layers thing. And what I suggest all of you do is come over and immediately create a new layer and call it your grid. Okay? That grid layer, you can wind up turning it into something that is just grid lines that you can see and turn on and off, however you want to do this thing. But this is, I'll show you the basics of how to do this so you guys can come up with ideas here. So on my grid layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my rectangle tool, start in the one corner and go all the way over to the other corner. So now I've got this rectangle, okay? And the stroke, I'm going to set it up so you guys can see it on the screen a little bit better, but I typically keep it to a 1 or even a 0.5 so it's nice thin lines. With this selected, I'm going to go up to Object and go to Path. And in Path, I'm going to go Split in the Grid. And this little box will come up. And what we want to do is click on Preview so we can watch the grid as we build it. Okay? And then you can see here that I can start adding rows. And typically I like going right around a 1/2 inch or so. And then columns, same idea. There we go, 1/2 inch. I wonder if that'll hit half. There we go. And then gutters are the areas between. So I like to give a little bit of a gutter in between. And you'll see here now I have got a grid. Now some people like bigger grids. And what I've found is if you've got a smaller grid, you're able to cover, 4, 6, 9 squares and still be working within the grid. But when your grid is so big, come on. Let's see if I can get this to go up. There we go. Let's say that this becomes like when the grid gets so big that you can't get smaller items, it gets kind of clunky. Okay, so do one more here. I'll show you a big grid. Object, Path, Split in the Grid, And so, like, let's say that I've seen students that do like a pretty big grid here. And we'll do preview. See, when a grid's this big, the problem is it's a lot harder to fit things in. So if I do 4, and then I get to 2, it gets a little clunky. That's why I say the smaller the grid, even at 1 inch, let's get this down to about 1 inch. There we go. Even at 1 inch, it's a little bit easier to fit things. So don't go too big on your grids. But so we'll do grids, and those of you that know Illustrator really well, if you turn this into guides, you'll see that these become guides here. All right. And the guidelines are really what you work for with a grid. And the layers, you can actually turn on and off your grid. So you're able to sit and work and then click off and go, okay, let's see how we're looking. Let me go back on and line things up. Let's see how we're looking. Go back off, see how we're looking, so on and so forth. All right. Now, adding materials, drawings, and selections. Give you a few quick ideas on this too. So we've got the grid, and let's say that I wanted to add some sort of a furniture piece. Well, what you guys should be doing when you go and find this stuff is you want to go to professional sites. Don't just go to I've had students go everywhere. You know, like they search and they find something that's like some person's picture from their own personal like Etsy account or Flickr account or something like that, and you don't want that. You want a professional, clean looking picture, because you're going to be finding furniture from manufacturers. So here I've got the Aeron. Okay, now when I look at the Aeron chair, which is pretty much standard now, most office designs, we typically throw something like this in, right? Don't use an image like this that's got all this stuff in the back. Why? Well, because now when somebody looks at it, they're getting this stylistic idea, and your style of your presentation and your design may not even be anything like this. Maybe modern, it may be classical, it may not be outdoorsy with a fly fishing rod, you know? So you want to use images like this. And to get these images, it's actually really easy. You want to find stuff that's got a white background so that you can easily just pull it in and pull it off of boards. And we'll talk more when we talk about Photoshop in the next weeks, how we can even pull that white background out really easy. But you just hover over this thing, right click, and you can do a save image, and it will save just that little image, which really makes things easy. Okay, so do that for furniture. Try to find, you know, real pieces that you're going to be able to order as though you are an interior designer, not just something that you saw in somebody's house or whatever. You need to be able to find these pieces. Okay, for materials, I go to places like Wilson Art or Formica, or, you know, whoever I'm using that kind of material. And again, look at these beautiful looking images. You right click, save the image as, okay? And it'll give you a nice, clean, easy to find image. So right here, if I go like this and I go save image as, and I get that swatch down, I go ahead and hit save. When I come into my boards, I'm able to then open, and here's the one that I just created. I'm going to bring him in. I'm going to open him up. Boom. And what I do then is I literally just can bring him over and put him on my board. Close this one up. Nah, I don't need to save that. And there you go. And a nice flat looking image is easily scalable. So I can grab this thing, hold my shift, and I can scale it, and it will fit. And if I have to pull it a little or something, since it's a material image and it's flat, you're not going to lose that view of what the material really is. It's not going to distort. Whereas if once I bring in, let's go ahead and bring in that chair too. Here's the different chairs, and this is where we would have to go into Photoshop and pull out just the chair I want. But for right now, I didn't want to get into Photoshop. I just want to show you where to find the stuff. See here, I can't just stretch, right? Because I've seen students do this, and it's like, that doesn't look like the chair really. So we want to make sure that when we're scaling furniture or something, that we're actually holding that shift key down and scaling. And then the problem is, well, does it fit correctly in my grid? And that's when you'll come in, and if it doesn't, what you'll wind up doing is maybe throwing a box over this. So let's go ahead and here, I'm going to do, let's see, it looks like it's a 3. So I'm going to put a box over here, and then I'll throw this inside the box, and let's move it to the front. Arrange, bring the front. And you'll see that having that white background, I'm able to put a white box that's larger that kind of fits in better with my grid, and now it looks like everything kind of goes with the grid better. Okay, and I could even move the sucker down a little bit. Like I said, once we get into Photoshop, I'd wind up pulling these out even and making white boxes around them. But now we're able to still function with the grid. All right. The other thing students always ask, and this one's a difficult one, but I'm going to show you guys some tricks here. Okay, I've got a CAD file. How do I bring a floor plan in and put it on my presentation board? Well, here's AutoCAD, and I've got, this is the old, some of you might have taken this basic drafting back when. That's the old basic drafting plan, right? Yes, I'm the one that made you guys draft that. I created it. All right, here's the deal. If you want to bring in AutoCAD, Illustrator can actually open it, but there's a but. It has to be 2010 or older. So how many of you guys know how to save down? In AutoCAD, you can go to AutoCAD and you can go to Save As, right? When you go to Save As down here, if you save down to a prior version, you can open it up in older versions. So the current one that we're on, you know, those of you guys that are running 13, 14, or 15, they all save to 13. That does not open up in Illustrator. But if you save down to 10, watch this. Minimize. I'm going to go open. I'm literally just going File, Open right in Illustrator. Here's my plan. Open. And there it is. Now it's in colors. So what am I going to do? I'm going to grab all of the stuff. I'm going to come over here to the stroke. Okay? Or it's up here, whichever one you want to deal with. And I'm going to turn everything to black. And look at that. You now have plan. And what I do is I grab this whole thing and I group it. Okay? Object, group, so that you don't have to pull, because it winds up, it'll break up into pieces otherwise. And then I can grab this guy, bring it on over, throw it on here, close this one up. Nah. And then this group, again, you want to hold the shift key because you don't want your floor plan looking all pulled in crazy directions. But we're able to come in here now and make it, you know, whatever size we need. And then what am I going to do? Well, of course, I'll probably put, and let's move that up a little bit, just so I've got some room here for this thing. I'll take and add another rectangle. And this one, I'll leave the black border on so you can see where I'm adding it. So let's do a rectangle there. And grab my plan, right click, transform, oops, sorry, arrange, bring the front. And then my nice border here. Take this guy. And look at how nice that looks on a board. Clean. The beauty of Illustrator is that it's called a vector program, meaning it reads lines. And AutoCAD's also a vector program, so they both read lines. You could actually change line weights and colors in Illustrator if you wanted to. You could even change text in Illustrator if you needed to. See? Dining space. So you can edit CAD drawings in Illustrator. All right. So hopefully these ideas, these basic ideas, I just want to start this off with the general high-level presentation here. Hopefully these ideas, you can kind of start to see how you get to here with presentation. All right. I'm going to open it up to questions. Let me pull up the question pane here. And let's see. Hey, Kenyatta, you're in my class. You get brownie points. Can you change the color mode options after the work is complete? No. Good question. And typically, you kind of can. Let me put this. You kind of can, but you can't fully. And the reason being is when you bring in these kind of images, so raster, these are vector, these are raster. Raster is like a JPEG file. When you bring this in, it's going to either already come in at CMYK or RGB, so it's already preset, or you're going to have to, it's going to ask you, like when you save out a Photoshop, it's going to ask you what it wants to save as. So it's typically a raster issue and not a vector issue as much. Good question, though. Let's see. Oh, sure. Yeah, you can email me my the question tomorrow. And yes, I am starting to feel better. I know. Last class, I caught a sickness right in last week. What is the best way to transfer CAD floor plans to Photoshop? Julia, I wouldn't transfer them to Photoshop, to be honest with you. Unless you, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to render with them? Because if you're trying to make a board, I'll tell everybody right now, don't make boards in Photoshop because they get messy quick. A JPEG file, the more you open it, the messier it gets. So, yeah, and if you're doing it just to render, like you could actually pull this thing from Illustrator into Photoshop. Now that it's an Illustrator piece, I could actually bring it into Photoshop. Okay? So I can directly pull it in. The problem is, once you go back from Photoshop to Illustrator, you have gone from vector or from raster to vector, and this will start getting pixelated. So I'm going to cover, can you cover? Georgie asks, what is vector compared to raster? Okay, so, and this is going to finish up Julia's thing here, is raster is images. So it's dots on a screen. It's that DPI, dots per inch, or PPI, that kind of idea. So when you take a photograph and you're in Photoshop, that is a raster image, all right? And if you try to blow it up, it pixelates, you know, it looks icky to say the least. Vector means it's lines. So when you enlarge or shrink it, it's still lines. So all it's doing is actually scaling lines. So you don't have all those dots. All right. So what happens there then is that if you've got lines, your drawing always stays cleaner. Your files always stay cleaner. And so for Julia, that's why we build inside Illustrator or InDesign, because InDesign is also vector-based instead of raster. Let me go through and make sure I'm color, get all this, change color, save my AutoCAD file as a PDF, and then as an image. Is that right? To bring into Illustrator, you should just open it up in Illustrator, or you know what else you can actually do? You can, and I'll do this real quick, file open, I'm sorry, file new. Let me do this real quick, file new. So I've got a new element here. I know we've got questions sitting on the board. I'll move it over a little bit. Where my questions go? If I go into AutoCAD here and I grab all this, I can actually control copy, minimize, and I can even control paste in here. The only problem is it just doesn't work as well for line weights. When I copy paste, the line weights, when they come in, you'll notice the text is a lot thicker than when you just open it up in Illustrator. Okay? So let me pull my questions back out now. So that's why I don't do that. I've tried it. I've tried almost everything, believe me, on this stuff. Not a question. What is vector? Thank you. Yeah, start using Illustrator or InDesign. I think I saw somebody say something about InDesign. So I save to JPEG, and then okay. So for Photoshop, I'm gonna open up Photoshop real quick. Let it open while I'm answering other questions, and Julie, I'll show you that. How do you suggest creating presentation boards for both print and electronic? What I suggest in my portfolio classes is that they make a set at 300 DPI, so they save basically for print, because you can always then change that and use it as a screen image. It's easier to go from CMYK to RGB than it is from RGB to CMYK. So you always save print, and then you can always reduce size for RGB. Okay? So just make them all print, and you're fine then. For some reason I thought that InDesign was much better for boards. Did I get that wrong? Cutting off the 3 small chairs, your image would be easily, yeah. No, Karen, InDesign is awesome for boards. A lot of it's a little bit more, actually it's a lot more complex of a program than Illustrator is. I feel that people, when they learn Illustrator and then go to InDesign, it makes it easier for them. You're right, InDesign kind of allows you to cut out stuff, whereas Illustrator, it's going to be Photoshop and Illustrator back and forth. InDesign has some of those tools built in already. So, but if you're good at InDesign, do it in InDesign. What I do like about InDesign is if you have multiple boards, it's easier to make multiple boards in InDesign. Even though Illustrator does now have the setup idea where you can make multiple artboards in Illustrator as well. Save a copy of the board in both RGB and CMYK to have both on hand. Tessa, CMYK to start, and then if you're going to do just a presentation on screen, so like you'll be able to reduce file size and stuff if you go from CMYK to RGB, which will be easier to like send over the internet, send email or whatever, however you want to do it. AI offers free classes. Yeah, you know what? great question, Sherry. We have got these sessions that are free sessions to learn Illustrator, Photoshop, I think InDesign, and a couple other ones. I believe that they're still running at the moment. I'll have to check it. I'm almost positive, 99% positive. I will post that in the Google+. How's that? All right. I'll put that in the Google+, because that's something that you guys should know more about. CAD to Illustrator. Okay, so we got to get Julia's. I think one of my greatest confusions is understanding which program is best for which application. Karen, that's a very good point. Like I say, Illustrator and InDesign are both great for layout. Photoshop is really about image manipulation. That's why they call it Photoshop. All right, so that's the way I look at it. Okay. Google+. Sherry, what class are you running right now? Your instructor should have something about Google+. We actually opened up, yeah, Karen, they're short courses, yep. We opened up a Google+ for the interior design students, and most of these classes right now have got a big old, hey, welcome to Google+ thing. So take a look in there in your announcements and see if it's there. If not, email me, and I'll actually, I have a couple minutes. I'll open up the Google+ in a second here. Adobe Short Courses are still running. Okay, you guys did look. I knew that they were running a couple sessions ago, but I haven't checked for the new year. Bonnie, Google+. Okay, I'll talk about that in a second. Then free classes start at the beginning of each month. Naomi, you rock. Will you be posting info on the new webinars on the Google+ page? Yes. Yes, 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 I will. And let me open up. Dun, dun, dun. And you guys, those of you that haven't seen my funny picture will then see my funny picture too. So let me move this back over to the side again. You get out of here. Go on, move. There you go. This is Google+. So we created an interior design student professional network, blah, 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 blah. And what we've done here is you guys can join this. It's kind of like a Facebook type of idea, but easier for us to actually maintain, and something that the art institutes will allow us to run as an interior design program. The problem with Facebook is they had far too much control, so we couldn't add our own stuff all the time. So so right here, the upcoming events, you'll see that this one's right here. Next week's is right there. So we post that kind of stuff here in the community. And then we've got students, you know, like Michael Brady. I'm sorry, faculty, students. We got faculty like Michael Brady, Lauren, there's Krista. They're all posting some of this stuff. Let's see if I can find the cool faculty member that posts some other things. There's Jorge posts some stuff. Where's that really cool guy that I like? Oh, Leslie posts a whole bunch of CAD demos, which are awesome. Man, where's that guy? Man, I can't even find him. I guess I should just, here, I'll do it the easy way. I'll show you guys, this is how easy it is. Come over to the side here, and there's events right here, so if we click on that, you'll see the events. You guys like my logo? I created that. Yep, I sure did. If you guys go under tutorials, tips, and tricks, look at this. There's that guy. Look at that. So this guy with the mustache and cowboy hat on, he's got a few Revit videos up. We know how people like Revit videos. And he also has some AutoCAD videos. Leslie's been creating some great AutoCAD videos. Look at this one. Oh, this one's really nice. How to create a potted plant in Revit. Whew. Painting walls in Revit. Pretty cool. So if you are not, if your class does not have the, there's a link in your announcements. It should be in every class. I thought it was. If it's not, email me. I will send you the link so you can be invited. And this is basically, we're trying to give you as much information as we can in this stuff. And Krista, myself, Chris Priest, Jessica, Who else? And Liz Thompson are really running a lot of this. We're you know, the rest of the faculty are then taking certain areas, so we're kind of pushing the beginning part of this and then letting all our cool faculty take over. So like Jorge, he's going to take over all the SketchUp stuff, and he's going to make some awesome SketchUp videos. You can see here he's already started, and there's just really it's the help forum is great, but this one we can throw a lot more up there, and you guys can find it easier. Okay. Google Plus, happy Martin. Hey, Julia, happy Mardi Gras. Thanks, Karen. Found it and have bookmarked it. Awesome, Bonnie. Is there a class that teaches Revit? Of course, Tessa. You didn't take my Revit class yet? ID 313. So that means you're going to have to build your restaurant in AutoCAD. You're going to be jealous. All the students that are building it in Revit. Sherry signed up. Colleen. Hey, Colleen. Julia. Tessa, 6 years. Wait till the first class you're coming back is mine. Oh, Tessa, you're in trouble. You are in trouble. You can ask any of these other students like Sherry or Julia or whatever. Oh, they're going to be like, man, you are. You know, Sherry just took my my restaurant class last term. I put her through the ringer. You don't have to know it. It's just, you know. No, you will get Revit. It's ID 313. It's probably in the next session or two for you. Karen abandoned CAD long ago. Oh, all right. So hopefully that helped you guys out. I don't want to see any more junk boards. I don't want to see any more boards that look like they're supposed to be wedding invitations. I want to see boards that look like professional interior design, really beautiful boards that highlight your design ideas, right? That's what we're looking for, so that when you guys get into a portfolio, all we're doing is minor changes, and you guys are really thinking about how you're going to present more than trying to go through and rebuild a ton of boards. Final board again for review of what should be looking like. Yeah, let me remove this. So that's one of them. So that's a nice, clean, easy to follow board. Okay. And I'll show you Lena's as well. And this is also another very nice, clean, easy to follow board. And we have got an area in Google Plus that we haven't populated yet, but we're just working on it. Next couple weeks, I will be putting up some more boards and some portfolios of our graduates, so you guys can go through and see what you're striving to achieve in here. All right? All right, everybody. A little longer than I wanted it to be, but hey, it's good. And hopefully you guys sign up for next week's. We'll talk a little bit about Photoshop and how we're going to manipulate some of those images to get them on the boards. Hope you all have a great evening. And next week, same time as this one. Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central again. All right, guys. Sherry, I'll look for your email on the Revit question. All right, everybody. Have a good evening.